Wides in T20 are worth 2.3 runs in total. Obviously, a wide itself is worth 1 run. I think we can all safely agree on that. But that's just its penalty. The ball also has to be re-bowled. And each ball in T20 cricket has a strike rate of 1.3 runs, so 2.3. However, not all balls in T20 cricket are worth 1.3 runs. The first ball of the 7th over is worth 0.84 runs, because the fielders have gone out and all the batters decide not to do anything silly, and mostly everyone blocks it out.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
Conversely, the last ball of the innings is worth 1.85 runs per ball. Pretty much exactly 1 run more. So a wide on that ball is going to be far more expensive than a normal wide earlier in the innings. It's also going to be far more common. When you know the opposition is likely to knock a single around the corner, you're only going to deliver a wide when something goes wrong with your action or the ball comes out of your fingers funny. When there is a beefed up hitter on 40 from 20 balls facing the last delivery, you're far more likely to bowl a wide because you're trying to hold the ball from them, or they're moving around the crease, or you just, shit yourself. The only other time you really see as many wides is going to be early on with the new ball because it's swinging around, and even with the spinners sometimes they struggle because of the lacquer on the leather. But you can really see this when you look at the stats. It completely follows up that basic cricket theory. Cricket with Ash has sent this over from all the wides bowled in the IPL. And you can see that the new ball really just can't be controlled that well. And at the end, as batters move around and set themselves for big hits, bowlers start to deliver more and more wide deliveries. In fact, it's almost twice as many wides as you see in the middle of the game. I could show this to any cricketer in the world who's ever played any T20 cricket, and they'd be like, yeah, that all makes sense. So the wides happen naturally early on, and the death is when they're a bit more forced upon you. And we saw a very good contest of this the other day, where the Sunrisers took on Chennai. And that meant that Ravi Jadeja, one of the best death hitters in the world, was going up against Bhuvi Kumar, one of the best death seamers in the world. In this particular case though, Bhuvi actually started his over against Dwayne Bravo, and he decided to follow him as he backed away, and because of that he delivered a leg side wide. The next ball was straighter, but it also happened to be a full toss, and Bravo hit that down the ground for 4. Then there was a miss hit out to leg. This meant that in 2 balls, Chennai already had scored 6 runs. Even if they'd knocked around a few singles, you'd assume they'd get to close to 10 runs, which is around par for the final over. But when you're bowling to Jadeja, you know he can go well beyond par, and he now has 4 balls to swing away with, and also knowing that there's a backup batter at the other end. Because Bravo is a good death hitter. In the last over of the match over the last few years, he's been scoring great. It's just that Jadeja is next level. And even if you split the difference between the two of them, you'd still think that a par over with these 2 batters at the crease should be around 14.5 runs. So with 4 legal balls left and these 2 guys at the crease, they could go well beyond that. So with all that in mind, Bhuvi decides to go wide to Jadeja. And the reason for this is simple. At this point, Jadeja is trying to hit everything over mid-on or mid-wicket, or just the leg side in general. You can see just how much he wants to hit there. Bhuvi knows his spots, so he's going to make him drag it. The problem was he delivered 2 straight wides. Well, 2 wides in a row, not 2 straight wides. That would be very confusing. One was a surprise quick short one that Jadeja was probably upset he missed, and then there was a cutter that missed the wide line. This meant that after 2 legal balls, there had been 3 wides and 8 runs bowled. And Jadeja was still on strike. But Bhuvi stayed with this line. And it was risky because he'd already bowled those wides, but he knew that he was better off dragging Jadeja as wide as possible, hoping that there would be a miss hit or he'd just miss the ball altogether. Also, at this point, Bhuvi probably thought a wide Yorker would do the trick, and that's what he went for. Unfortunately, it was a wide full toss. But because the ball was so wide and Jadeja wasn't quite set for it, all he could do was mistime it, hit it up in the air, and he was out caught. For some reason, Bhuvi still bowled another wide the next ball, and then there were 3 mishits to finish off the over. So in the end, it went for 15 runs, which is certainly more than you would hope for if you were the Sunrisers. But with the set Jadeja and Bravo, I was looking at 14.5 being around par. They scored 15. It wasn't an ideal over, and the wides that really got away from Bhuvi were probably the ones to Bravo and to the new batter. Not to mention that the mishits were a bit annoying as they kept going in gaps. But if you just focus on the Jadeja balls, he paid 2 runs to get Jadeja. There is no one in the death over who would not accept that. But the problem here is when it doesn't work, because that was a full toss. And if Jadeja just knocks that over cover's head, that's a 4. That means he scored 6 runs off that 1 ball because of the 2 wides before. In fact, because Jadeja knew it was going to be a wide full toss, he could have set up for that, hit it down the ground for 6, which would have meant that he would have scored 8 runs off that 1 single legal delivery. When you're bowling to someone like Jadeja, the wides is a pretty sound tactic. You know where he wants to hit it and you're keeping it as far away as possible. It may not look like it was a great over because it went for 15 runs. And it's probably one of the most expensive that Bhuvi has bowled in this tournament so far because he's been bowling really well. But this is a pretty good over. It wasn't executed perfectly, but it also definitely wasn't a horrible over. And yet it still went for 15. That tells you the kind of margins that death bowlers are working with. And I get it. Wides look ugly, and mathematically it doesn't always add up. But keeping the ball as far away from someone like Jadeja's hitting zone means that you're more likely to dismiss him. For instance, for most of his career, the batter who faced the most wides was Chris Gale. This has been happening for a long time, and occasionally you hear people say there should be a harsher penalty for wides in T20, especially as so many of the wides in T20 cricket are very different to how one-day wides were in the 80s and 90s. At that period, if you bowled a wide, it's probably because the ball got away from you. At this stage, it's not really the ball getting away from you. You're bowling that line on purpose, knowing that some of the balls are going to be called and there's not much you can do about it. And so while delivering wides on purpose goes against normal cricket logic, there's a reason that players keep doing it again and again. And if you go back to my original logic of how much a wide is worth, if you think about that last over, a wide is worth 2.86 runs per ball. And that's a lot, but it's still not as much as Jadeja dropping 37 runs on you, as happened to Harshal Patel last year. I'm not sure there's that much of a movement against the semi-intentional wides at the moment. But perhaps if that ever happens, we'll end up with a 2-run penalty or a free hit. But while bowlers can do this, they're going to gamble with it. They know it might cost them more runs up front, but they also know that getting hit for 6 is terrible.